bubble letters. These are probably my favorite. What you're going to need is a pencil, and I will be using colored pencils because you really can't see this one very well, but pencil and then your colored pencils. And I have done this so much that I just go for it. But if you're new to bubble lettering or balloon lettering, you'll probably want to draw your words first with your pencil. And so I'm going to start under here, and you can draw guidelines if you want. I don't. I just go for it because I'm just practicing right now. So what you should start with is all caps close together. And I'm going to draw these kind of dark, but you would draw them lightly because you're either going to erase them or draw over them. And depending on what kind of letters you make will determine how your letters go. So you guys can see that. And I am going to, now that I've got my phrase written out, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to go around the outside like you would a block letter, except all the junctions and pieces are going to have curves in them. And you kind of take your pick. Sometimes I don't put the little smile under here under an A, and sometimes I might put one here for the U. It just depends on how you want to do it. But I start at the beginning, and then every other letter of the word goes underneath. So my T, and I'm going to do this kind of light so I can go back and erase it. My T, and how big you make it is up to you. And you see it crosses over the H because the H is going to start behind. And as you can already tell, it's not perfect, and you're going to have a lot of wiggle room. Then you just go and you start outlining all of your letters in kind of this bubble or balloon. And that T might be a little big. I might go back and make it a little smaller. And I'm drawing pretty dark, so it's going to be hard for me to erase, but hopefully you guys are drawing really lightly. And then I do the same thing for the Y. I write my Y's with a curve, but for the bubble letters, I'm going to do kind of this little sharp point right there. And then put the other letter behind as much as you can. Makes it look like it's been stuck together. And I'm going to try with the little thing on the U maybe this time. I don't know. I think it looks better like that sometimes. And then this will go like that. Now, like I said, I have drawn it very, very dark so that you guys can see it on the screen. I'm going to color it like I did up here. And so I'm going to go over my colors or my letters with this blue pencil. And maybe then I can erase the middle, or maybe I'll just leave it for you guys. But I'm going to go over the areas that I like in the blue, and then I'll color it with the pink. And I'm going over these pretty dark because I want my outline to be nice and dark, and I already know what's good and what's not because I've done kind of the little rough draft. You can see my letters get smaller. It's okay. If I had drawn guidelines, they probably wouldn't do that, but I'm just practicing. And you know what? This U's not so bad. Kind of looks like an upside down N. So at this point, I could go in and erase my pencil lines, and especially if I was using a marker, you would not be able to see them, and the marker would stay. I'm not going to erase too hard because I'll probably erase my crayon lines, and I don't want to do that. But now I've just got the outlines, and so I can go in and color. It's your choice. I'm going to use a color scheme where I have kind of a light pink, a darker pink, and then a yellow for highlight. You can choose whatever you want, but I like to give it a little bit of dimension. So I'm going to use this middle pink and color the whole of the letters pink. And I'm going to do it fairly lightly because I'm going to come back in and do some shading. So I'm going to color all of them pink. Okay, now I've got a base of pink. Now I'm going to come back in and add this kind of darker pink mauve color, and I'm going to do so by just kind of starting at the bottom of every bubbly part. I come in here and kind of do the bottom strokes just a little bit and the bottom outline, just to kind of give it a shadow and a dimension. I don't put any dark pink at the top. You don't need any dark pink at the top. And I put them on the bottoms of most of my strokes. And I may come back in here and do some more. But definitely the bottom. And I can come back in and a little lightly with the dark pink bring my stroke up into it a little more if I wanted to. Okay, there's the U. And then I'm going to come in here to the thank. Wow. All right, now you can add some highlights. I'm going to use a yellow because I don't have a white, and I'm going to put some lightness up in the tops and also kind of add a little bit of other color in here so it just looks like I took more time because, well, I did. I'm going to come to the top of the letters, add some of this highlight color. And then I probably will go back in with my middle pink and just fill in a little bit better. So now that I have my areas that are highlighted and shadowed, just make it a little bit darker. And the last thing I'm going to do is add a shadow on the bottom. Now I chose green because it's kind of a contrasty color with the pinks, and it's analogous to the blue, but you can choose whatever color shadow you want. If you want the shadow to pop, you should choose something that contrasts with this. So if your letters are blue, you're going to want to choose maybe like an orange or a yellow shadow. If your letters are purple, probably yellow. If your letters are red, you probably don't want a pink shadow because it's not going to show up very well. So I'm going to use a green shadow, and I'm going to pretend that my light source, I'm going to put this cup kind of right over here, is coming from here. So you'll see that this edge of the letters have no shadow whatsoever. So the tops for sure have no shadow, and this side of the letters has no shadow. So the shadow, like you see up here, is going to go definitely on the bottom of the letters and then on the far side. So every stroke that is up and down that's on the left side over here gets a shadow. And even a little bit right here because it's on the bottom. So this gets a shadow. Even that gets a little shadow. And is this in perspective? No. Is it perfect? No. It just gives it a quick dimension. You can even put shadow on the inside top of your holes too. That's another good place to put a little shadow because that's where the light doesn't hit. And you can kind of connect your shadow at the bottom. But I'm not going to put any shadow over here because that's on this side of with the light side, but I might put a little right here. And I might, nope, because that's on the right side. That's on the light side, so I'm not going to do that. And you can pull your shadow as big as you want it. You can even make it 2 colors. I can kind of fade it with some light pressure. And then I'm going to go to here. And there you go. There is a bubble letters with a little bit of dimension that you can use on your cards and signs and homemade stuff. On to block lettering. Block lettering is a little bit more difficult because of the sharp points So I usually prefer bubble lettering, but for those of you who want to make some three-dimensional looking letters, this is not the only way to do it by any means. And you will notice lots of different block letters with shadows going in different directions, and this is just one way, and it's fairly simple. You start the same way you did with the thank you or the bubble letters, and you sketch out what you want to say. And I chose to use lowercase in this example. You don't have to, but I thought I would show you guys what it looks like to use lowercase. And big open letters because you're going to have to go around them. So there's you rock. Let me move it a little bit. And now the first step that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a horizontal line on every end point, sharp end point. And you see I skipped some. I'm going to go back to them. You're going to have to decide what to do with some of the letters here. If you notice up here, my C, I'm going to scoot down, does not look like this. You can make your C look like that. I find that it's more difficult. And so with letters like C and K and R, what I usually do is add feet to some of these sticky outy bits in angles, just like I will for the C. So my C, move it up, my C and my K are going to have angled endpoints instead of flat endpoints. Same with the R here. You could have made the R like this and come all the way down with it, but I find that's more difficult when doing it hand letter. So that's just a side note. So I'm going to go back up here. So these letters, their endpoints are going to be at an angle. And you'll notice the curved parts, I did not do any guidelines. We're just going to kind of wing those. But if you do the feet and endpoints of your hard lines first, makes it pretty easy to go through. So now I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to kind of draw around the outside of my letters, and I'm going to use these feet to connect the pieces. This letter I'm going to draw a little bit on the outside and a little bit on the inside. The curved letters are pretty much as they are. And so when I get to the top of the R, I'm just going to kind of use it as an outline and get it done pretty good. And then again, this one is just kind of itself. And then outside and then inside. And you'll see that was a lot easier to do than trying to curl all the way around like I did at the bottom. And then I like the exclamation point to come to a point, so I'm going to ignore this and do it like that. And then make a bigger line. Okay, I'm going to use my dark black kind of graphite pencil to do the outlines for this one. Now I'm going to erase. Alright, and I might have to come back in here and darken up some lines, but I might do that later. Shadows. I'm going to do it with a pencil first. You can choose whichever way you want to do your block shadows. I, again, prefer my light kind of coming from this area, so all my shadows kind of go like that. You can do it however you want. You can choose whichever direction you want, but that's kind of the way that I do it. And I might, just kind of draw a couple of lines around here to make sure I remember. But I'm going to do, for these block shadows or the raised parts, three-dimensional effect, I'm going to take my pencil, I'm going to do the same thing that I did to block out the letters. I'm going to draw, except it's not going to be horizontal. I'm going to draw at a 45-degree angle little lines coming off of every sharp point. This one's behind, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to worry about mostly the ones at the front that I can see. And I'm going to come back and do those curves in a minute. They're kind of crazy. But kind of 45-degree angle every hard line that I can see. And that behind. And this one gets a little weird too. Now, what do we do with the angles or the round parts? You're going to do the same thing. At the bottom of your stroke, you're going to add a little 45-degree angle. And kind of at the top. So wherever 45 comes off of your letter, they're really kind of tough. Another reason I prefer bubble letters. And there's my stroke is here. And that's the beginnings. Now you come back and you connect them. And I'll start here. And you're going to draw parallel to the stroke that's already there. So I'm drawing parallel to the stroke that's already there, mimicking what I have here. This one is, when you have a letter like this, it's a little tricky. You're going to go behind right here. And then I'm mimicking every stroke that's already there. So in this case, I'm mimicking the curve of the C, mimicking the curve of the O. And some of these you just kind of have to use your eyeballs and your brain because it won't be obvious sometimes. There's a little stick back in there, so that was a little weird. And then mimicking the curve of the O. And this one's back behind it, so you're not going to have one here. And there's your block shadow. You can color them however you want. I do like to go over them with a color so you can really see the hard lines. So I'm going to go back over these as well with my black. So then you think, Mrs. Ballo, what about the middle of my letters? Well, this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Because the middle of your letters, I just color black. Because that's so hard to make the black shadows on the inside of the letters. For me, it's not worth my brain power. So I just color them black. And then we can get to coloring the letters. Okay, for my letters, I used a red to orange fade because two colors always looks better. It always looks better when you use two colors. I started with orange and I colored the whole face of my black letters. I colored them orange. Okay, so there's my flat orange. And now I'm going to come back with the red. And I really only want to bring the red up about halfway. Why? Because that's what I chose. So pick a letter that you want as your reference and start at the bottom with a dark red and then just lighten up as you go. You can always bring your red up a little farther if you want to. But start at the bottom with heavy hand pressure. And then lighten up as you go up. And you could, if you're using colored pencil, if you wanted to lighten up the top a little bit, you could bring in a yellow. Don't do this with marker because your darker orange is already down. You could blend a little yellow here at the top. And then I could either come in here with an orange and make my orange a little darker, burnish it a little bit, which that looks pretty cool, so I think that's what I'll do. All right, as for the shadows, what color do you do them? Rare. You could choose any color you want. You could go crazy with a green or a blue. I'm just going to come in here with some brown. And maybe do it lighter than I did at the top. And you really could go nuts. You could do a darker brown on the bottom and a lighter brown right here, depending on how much difference you wanted between the faces. Becomes a little tricky here because it's kind of dark at the bottom and then lightens up as you go. So you pick your poison. But a flat color all the way around will work for sure. Come back. You can always darken spaces that are light, which is nice. You can't lighten spaces that are dark very easily. That does not work. And then I added a glow around mine. You can do that too. I took my yellow pencil and I started close to the letter, fairly dark, not super dark, but I just went around and kind of outlined every bit in a yellow. And then depending on how big you want your outline, you come back and expand it. And then if you wanted your lighter hand pressure, oops, I didn't even do that part. Lighten it up and kind of scumble your way around. There's you some outer glow. That's pretty good looking shadows. I like them. All right, so there are two different types of letters.